but they take on a new dimension of fear when they're seen at high altitude from the window of an aircraft.
What is that? What is that?
Astonishing footage of mile-high confrontations captured by pilots and passengers have given us a new, up-close look at the unimaginable.
It can change their life in ways that they've never expected.
Once I started filming it, I didn't want it to stop.
Oh man, look at that thing, dude.
What the hell is this thing?
And recently, declassified videos captured by military fighter jets reveal a frightening truth. We are not alone in the skies.
Look at this thing. It's rotating.
I don't know that they train you for what happens when a UFO shows up.
It was unlike anything I had ever seen in my life.
This is some of the best footage we have. It's only going to get better.
These videos let us see and hear the up-close threat of encountering an unknown craft in the open skies, where people are vulnerable
Oh my God, he's turning into us.
and unable to escape. Anything might happen.
I had this feeling that just washed over me that they're here for me.
This might be the most important issue facing us as a planet.
Speeding through the clouds, thousands of meters above the ground, gives us an awe-inspiring way to see our planet.
If you're flying, you've got great visibility. It's beautiful blue sky, any direction you look.
I find a lot of solace up there. It's a beautiful thing to look out and see all those mountains. I love it.
But on some fateful flights, a UFO encounter can turn wonder into terror in a matter of moments.
Pilots are much more likely than the average person to see a UFO.
When you get visual sightings combined with radar, electronic tracking, that makes the experience a lot more powerful and credible.
You have to look at these cases as potentially dangerous.
And veteran pilot Eric Delgado is one of many to have a frightening high-altitude encounter.
30 years of flying, man, I've never seen anything like it.
During his career as a U.S. Air Force pilot and a cargo pilot, Eric has logged thousands of hours in the air.
For someone like Eric with his vast experience in the military and commercial flying, this was just another day in the office.
Eric's night starts like any other. He's flown the same cargo route from Querétaro, Mexico to Memphis, Tennessee with his first officer for almost a month. The men take off without a hitch and are soon cruising through Mexican airspace at over 11,000 meters, not knowing that they're flying over a UFO hotspot.
Mexico's had a long history of very interesting UFO sightings, going back decades and decades.
But when you're on a routine flight, chances are nothing's going to happen to you night after night. So I don't think they were on alert.
In a single moment, Eric's night goes from routine to potentially life-threatening.
Autopilot's connected, we're 37,000 feet. I looked over my left shoulder. I see a light, like if you could imagine a lighthouse in thin fog, and it's spinning around. Holy shit. My heart stopped and I'm thinking, man, it's a plane. Oh my God, he's turning into us. Our procedures tell us to disconnect the autopilot to get out of an imminent collision. That's what I thought was happening.
As this unknown craft invades his airspace, Eric is shocked and scared beyond belief.
I was expecting the traffic collision and avoidance systems is going to start screaming at us to descend, and there was nothing, man. Nothing. No video, audio, nothing other than our eyeballs.
In both the pilot and the first officer's case here, they're former military. They would absolutely be prepared for mechanical failure, for weather conditions. I don't know that they train you for what happens when a UFO shows up.
And before Eric can even think of calling ground control for help, the object makes the first move.
This thing slowly rotates and then kind of floats. This guy parked himself off our left wingtip, and the whole landing light, flashlight, whatever the hell it was, I mean, it's not there anymore. It kept this constant pulse. It never wavered. We're just watching it go bright, dim, bright, dim. I don't see any strobe lights. I don't see any beacon lights, nav lights. Man, I don't even see any wings. No sound. No reverberation. It was silence.
Eric comes to an incredible conclusion.
I realized, this thing's UFO, man. I go, where's my camera?
Now let me zoom in, man. It's like an orb, man. Look at that shit. It's pulsating.
Eric is far from being the only pilot to see strange lights in the sky. Airborne sightings go all the way back to the early days of aviation. One of the first and most famous air encounters occurred in 1947.
The Kenneth Arnold sighting is really the grandfather of all aerial encounters. On June 24th, 1947, Kenneth Arnold was flying in Washington State near Mount Rainier when all of a sudden he saw several strange objects flying through the mountains.
I assumed at the time they were a new formation or a new type of jet, though I was baffled by the fact that they did not have any tails. It passed almost directly in front of me.
Kenneth Arnold described their motion as being saucers skipping on water.
That is where our modern flying saucer term came, and what really brought the American public to the realization that something was going on in our skies.
If it's not made by our science or our Army Air Forces, I am inclined to believe that it's of an extraterrestrial origin.
As a pilot, seeing a UFO is an unexpected and unwanted event.
If you were a pilot in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and you reported a sighting, chances are you would have a desk job the next day.
But in this new era of ufology, viewpoints are changing, and the truth is emerging.
Some 10 or so years ago, they issued a directive to commercial pilots that if you had a UFO incident, you should report it to one of these civilian groups such as NARCAP.
Now pilots are coming clean, and this is good news because finally we're getting the truth about what's going on in our skies.
No one wants to be the person who saw aliens. So ultimately, for people to come forward and they have that credibility, pushes the needle forward.
Eric's incredible encounter will give the world a stunning look at a UFO up close. And it's not over. As he nears the U.S. border, Eric realizes the strange object is tracking him.
I start to film it, and this thing kind of slides further back. I wonder, does he know I'm doing this? I got on the radio and I said, platillos, platillos, which in Spanish means UFOs.
Platillos, platillos. He's a pulsating orb. Look at that, dude. Look at that.
I'm trying to hold the camera as steady as possible.
And suddenly, it was gone.
What I was like, just disappeared. Where'd he go? Is he there? All right. Oh, it's the clouds.
We're kind of flabbergasted by the whole thing. I'm looking at my nav display and there's nothing there.
Well, there it is. Right there, man, on my ND. There's our airplane. And there's no TCAS. There's weather about 40 miles off our left wingtip where this thing seems to have disappeared.
The most dramatic part is he then pans down to show the viewer the actual aircraft avoidance system. You can see the weather that the light disappeared into, but the actual object itself is not registering on any of the systems. This is bizarre. For all intents and purposes, it is by definition an unidentified flying object.
Encountering an unknown object at high altitude is alarming for any pilot. A commercial flight over New Mexico experienced this terror firsthand.
On February 21st, 2021, an American Airlines flight over New Mexico called in air traffic control to report a strange object flying above their aircraft.
Have any targets up here? We just had something go right over the top of us that, I hate to say this, looked like a long cylindrical object.
You can tell just from the pilot's own reaction that this is nothing he's ever seen before. And when it approaches that close to one's own aircraft, that's got to raise all kinds of alarm bells.
It almost looked like a cruise missile type of thing moving really fast that went right over the top of them.
It was a really close call. It was too close for comfort.
So this is definitely a UFO event because nobody really knows what this thing was.
Aviation laws dictate that aircraft are not allowed to approach closely. It's far too dangerous. And yet often we have these UFOs approaching aircraft much closer than they should be.
Much like the pilots who spotted the cylindrical object in New Mexico, Eric and his first officer are stunned by their close brush with the unknown.
You're trying to reason through this. Good grief, what do we do? What do we say? We're replaying this thing, and it was in the replaying of it that you could see a shape. It was almost like an orb type teardrop thing.
Flying through storm clouds, Eric loses sight of the craft and hopes it's gone for good.
We pop out the weather, and this thing is still there. I'm just like, man, what is going on?
Dude, it's pulsing, man. Look at that.
Entered an incredible high-flying era of airborne UFO experiences. Spectacular encounters with craft of unknown origins threaten pilots and passengers.
There's very, very few things that'll scare me up there, but I got scared.
Racing through the night sky, pilot Eric Delgado is locked in the grips of a mysterious UFO encounter.
I don't believe what I'm seeing. We're just watching, and I was like, oh no, grabbing my camera, boom, and I'm filming another video.
See, look at the shape. See it? As I zoom in, you'll get like a little bit of a teardrop.
On the verge of U.S. airspace, the unidentified craft transforms.
Minutes before we changed from Monterey Center to Houston Center, this thing started peeling off. Thank God I was rolling then because it started changing colors.
He's pulling away, dude. And he's turning colors too. He's pulling away.
And it's gone, man. It was that fast. Nothing we have that's gonna move that fast.
And just like that, whatever it was, is gone.
So my first officer was an ex-Air Force pilot like I was. He told me two things. He goes, one, I don't know what it was, and two, he goes, I want a copy of that video.
This is very compelling footage of something that's clearly unexplained.
It didn't act like an airplane, it didn't move like an airplane, it didn't sound like an airplane, it didn't look like an airplane. What the hell is this thing?
The audio recorded during Eric's encounter also paints a compelling picture.
It really helps to hear Eric's story in his own words as it is happening.
Anything? Any TCAS returns? No. Okay, flip the switch down. He's definitely above our altitude. This guy is not reporting TCAS. That is a unidentified flying object, bro. I can finally say I saw one now. That is cool.
This is a seasoned pilot. Tens of thousands of hours in the air, and he could not explain it.
Off the coast of Florida, on an aircraft carrier with some of our most sophisticated detection and tracking technology. Even there, the world's most elite pilots are unsafe from unexpected encounters. Navy cryptologist Matt Roberts, working top secret intelligence aboard the USS Theodore Roosevelt aircraft carrier, has an incredible story.
This was unlike anything I'd ever seen. In 2015, we were preparing for deployment, and one of my buddies who worked in another part of intel on the ship said, "Hey, check this out."
What Matt sees is highly classified footage taken by one of the fighter pilots as he tracks an unidentified object blazing through the sky.
My gosh. We're going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Look at that thing, dude.
The thing that immediately struck me was that there was no sign of propulsion. There didn't appear to be any kind of aviation surfaces. There were no wings.
Did you talk to moving target? No, I took an auto track. Oh, okay. Oh my gosh, dude. Wow. Look at the sky.
Listening to the pilot's reactions, it was clear that they were having the same reaction I had. This is not something that should exist.
Matt's job is off the flight deck, but he's seen enough fighter jet footage to know that this is incredibly abnormal, with no easy, earthly explanation.
It was almost like somebody had hit me in the face with a shovel. I had this feeling that just washed over me that they're here for me.
This first encounter is just the beginning for Matt, and will one day become the smoking gun that cracks the classified world of UFO sightings wide open.
What exactly are we dealing with here? Whose is it? Where is it from? And what's it up to? I think from a military perspective, finding a threat that is unknown is really problematic.
Across the country, another airborne threat rocketed up the West Coast in 2017, sending Oakland air traffic control into a frenzy and scrambling intercept jets. The communications between the pilots and air traffic control reveal a deeply troubling, highly unusual event.
Hey, you know what, that target south of the boundary there, that 0027 code moving very fast at 37,000?
Look at that thing.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Huh. And you don't have anything on him, huh?
I got nothing.
Alright, I'll report that.
As the mysterious object speeds into Seattle's airspace, it's reported by one commercial flight, then another, then another.
Center, good evening, Southwest 4712, flight level 380, and we're watching that unknown aircraft at 1 o'clock.
The menacing craft isn't showing up on air traffic control radar, forcing them to depend on pilot eyewitness reports to pinpoint its location.
United 612, take a look out the right side for an airplane that may be northbound 370-ish.
Yeah, we got him.
When you have these unknown aircraft entering airspace that do not have a transponder that can appear or disappear on radar, this adds this frightening layer to flying in an aircraft.
Airspace has been invaded, and lives are in danger. So fighter jets are sent to intercept the ominous craft.
So do you have a last reported heading speed and altitude for the violator? He's parallel to United 612. He's just been there the whole time. No marking has been able to determine the type of an aircraft right now.
Their lives literally may depend on what this craft's intentions are.
Air traffic controllers across the Pacific West Coast are baffled.
But there was definitely something out there. There was definitely something. Now we got fighters out flying all over. They don't know where they're going or what they're looking for.
And just like that, it was gone, without a trace. These incredible mid-air sightings challenge all logic and training, leaving their witnesses rattled.
Up to this point, there was nothing in my naval career that I couldn't just put away. I didn't have an answer for that. I didn't know.
But what do we do with this building momentum of sightings and information?
I think we need to start getting some of those secrets out into the public.
I don't buy the mass hysteria theory. We know what's out there. We're just waiting for the government to pick up the pace.
I have a certain level of trust in my fellow man that he can handle this without going nuts. I was already a believer, but I just thought, oh, I'll never see one.
Back on the USS Theodore Roosevelt, Matt Roberts is grappling with unexpected emotions.
I found myself just watching this footage over and over again. I didn't understand that reaction that I was having, but it was incredibly emotional and very disturbing. It was on par with, being deployed and when my younger brother was dying of cancer, it rose to that level of emotion for me.
When someone like Matt, who sees things that are top secret, looks at this video and has absolutely no explanation, that's incredibly important.
Science tells us this is impossible. So there was this kind of questioning of everything that I thought to be reality up to this point. I wasn't sure what to believe.
And some mysteries may never be answered.
If there was some kind of program that studied this in the government, I wasn't read into it, so I'm just never gonna know what this was all about. This wasn't something I ever thought would see the light of day.
But years later, Matt finds himself once again face to face with the disturbing footage. And this time, it's in the public eye.
One day my brother sends me a link to the New York Times article about the Pentagon's UFO program. Here I am watching this footage now on my phone that I had initially seen behind closed doors in a classified space. It was like somebody had knocked the wind out of me.
Unidentified flying objects encountered by credible witnesses high in the sky have helped push us into the dawn of a new era of understanding and wonder.
This is a true phenomenon that we in the public really don't have a good grasp of.
We were just stupefied. Am I looking at what I think I'm looking at?
When pilots see something up there, they're gonna get a close-up look at it.
If this was something explainable, why would they come out with it? We're seeing the tip of the iceberg.
The release of top-secret UFO footage stuns our population.
Luis Elizondo ran the Pentagon's Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. We know that in around 2017, he began to have these videos declassified.
What we have are referred to as the gimbal, the go fast, and the FLIR.
They made a big splash in the media. It was shocking. It was not something that we were expecting. You've got the establishment media now actually looking at this as a serious, genuine phenomenon.
The genie is definitely out of the bottle now. The U.S. government has officially shown us these videos of objects they cannot explain. There's no going back from that.
For Matt, the official release of this incredible UFO evidence has a powerful and profoundly personal impact.
I was there when this was collected. Watching this again, I was having just this intense emotional reaction to it, and it wouldn't go away.
Like Matt, Eric is transformed by his experience.
Jeez, man, that is freaky, man. I was reviewing the clip over and over again when I can't believe what I just saw.
Looking to share his stunning encounter, Eric reports his sighting to the Mutual UFO Network.
They said, we have footage on file that looks a lot like yours, but it's taken from the ground. You're the first one that's been taken from the air.
Even though I was never a believer, I believe it now. This has obviously changed my life. I thought I was going to stay in the Navy and retire. I decided against that.
It's not for any of us to tell somebody in the military how they're supposed to risk their career by coming forward with a UFO story. For those that do, you find that they're usually guided by a higher sense of public and civic duty.
This footage was released to the public, and what happened as a result was this massive resurgence of interest in UFOs.
We're comparing, we're analyzing, we're asking questions.
The public woke up to the reality that something is making incursions into American airspace.
There's a lot we don't know about this, but it does appear to fit the pattern of long-standing UFO encounters by the United States military.
UFOs were the last thing on Nathan Wallner's mind as he jetted through the West Coast skies.
I went down to LA for our 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu 15-year anniversary.
The MMA instructor and Air Force veteran didn't expect his in-flight entertainment to be extraterrestrial.
It's a beautiful thing to look out and see all those mountains, and that's when I noticed this thing. It was unlike any other airplane or jet that I saw while I was in the Air Force.
You're not going to serve in the Air Force and not know a thing or two about aircraft.
This is someone in a passenger plane, not expecting anything to happen.
You're idly sitting by, looking at your window and not expecting to see a UFO.
Somewhere over Northern California, I see this dark little dot. I thought if it was another plane, something's going on with it. Maybe they're in trouble or something. It started to spin around, and then it started to stretch out. It gets darker and darker. You don't see any propulsion. You just see this thing just start moving away. And what's crazy is that it almost looks bigger as it's getting away. It was so bright, I was trying to zoom in on my phone to get a good view of it.
I've been to a lot of air shows, and you see great puffs of smoke coming out of certain aircraft. And initially I thought perhaps it was something like that. And no sooner did I think that when it started to morph and elongate, and it was like, all right, now what am I looking at?
It's definitely not a balloon, not a plane or a helicopter. This is a UFO.
Suddenly, one more element adds to Nathan's mysterious encounter as a recognizable aircraft enters the vicinity.
It's important to see that jet because it is clearly identifiable as a jet, which then speaks even more to the strangeness of this object.
When the jet flew by, I knew that what I was looking at was really big. And so that's what really made me go, okay, what the heck is that?
And then Nathan makes an absolutely chilling conclusion.
Oh my gosh, this is something that's not an airplane.
High above the ground, at supercharged speeds, airborne UFO encounters give us an up-close and personal view of unknown craft.
It's always cool to see something that blows your mind, and that definitely did.
Nathan Wallner's mind races as he tries to process his incredible encounter.
Every contrail that I've ever seen has been white. When that smaller jet flies through, it just gives you even more of a contrast to the dark black cloud that surrounded the object. I just knew that the way it was moving like that was not the way an aircraft moves as I know it.
The object in Nathan's video is not conducive to human pilots. It's rotating, it's spiraling, it's tumbling. That is not the way humans normally travel.
Across the globe, there are 2 passengers who can relate. They were on board a plane flying over the Aegean Sea when they saw an inexplicable shape carving through the clouds outside their window.
That's not. What is it? Kerry, what is that? What is that? Kerry, what is that?
No idea.
Holy crap!
This is a very, very large object, and it looks from this footage like it's fairly close.
I wanted to find a normal explanation that it was some sort of smoke or dark contrail, but the fact that it seemed to have solid structure at one point speaks against that.
You can tell from the passengers' reactions that they are absolutely stupefied by what they're seeing.
Kerry, what is that? What is that?
In all of these cases, one thing stands out to eyewitnesses. No matter their shape, these objects move differently than our own aircraft.
This thing moved faster than any airplane I am familiar with.
The main noteworthy element of this object's behavior is that it seemed intelligent. It comes down, it stops, it shines a light at them, and it simply paces them at a very close distance for 30 minutes. That's indicative of a plan.
If we look at Delgado's sighting, he saw a Foo Fighter, basically. During the Second World War, fighter pilots and bomber pilots would often report balls of light that would dance around their aircraft.
All Eric knows is that this is nothing he's seen before, not in 30 years of flying.
There's no drones that I know that will go up that high and trail us at Mach 8 times the speed of sound.
It's able to fly at a really good speed without any obvious aerodynamic features.
It's so obviously not a balloon, couldn't possibly be a blimp or a shooting star. What is this thing? That's the million-dollar question.
If radar did not pick up this aircraft, technically it was carrying some sort of technology that made it not detectable by radar. Whether it was a stealth aircraft or something else, that's the mystery.
And this is what stealth is all about.
Another startling fact that shakes Eric's nerves, deepens the mystery.
We may be able to hide from radar, but not from the human ear.
As a tanker pilot, you get close enough formation to some of these fighters. I mean, it's loud. There was no sound.
Back on the USS Theodore Roosevelt, Matt Roberts is wrestling with the mystery and threat of his inexplicable UFO encounter.
I immediately knew that this was not ours, so the question becomes, whose is it?
These aircraft don't have any visible wings, so we're not really sure how they're generating lift.
There are viable theories about creating an anti-gravitic effect. We've had scientists studying this phenomenon since the 1950s at the least. But if they've made these breakthroughs, then they better get the teenagers away from the controls of these things, because someone is obviously joyriding.
Here it is, literally in black and white. What is it? We had better find out, because they're flying circles around us.
Personal recordings, official reports, and leaked footage are combining to build a critical mass of incredible high-altitude encounters.
The gimbal video was taken in the midst of a large wave of very perplexing sightings that the United States Navy was having.
One of these objects almost hit a fighter plane mid-flight. Two pilots were flying in the air, and all of a sudden, this cube-shaped object suddenly appeared out of nowhere and went right between them.
It was described as a sphere inside a cube. They were told that maybe they were encountering some kind of drone technology, but look, let's get real here. All right, a cube and a sphere. How is that a drone? How does that fly? And how does that go between two F-18 Super Hornets?
Seeing something unexpected, unexplainable, and possibly extraterrestrial can be terrifying and downright exhilarating.
When you listen to men who are flying these $66 million planes yelling like little kids, that just speaks to the credibility of their case.
And it's pulsating too, man. That is nuts. Oh, I wish you would get closer. I can't believe you saw it.
You don't want a nervous individual piloting these aircraft. You want someone who's able to handle pressure. These gentlemen are able to do that. And so when they see something that they don't recognize, you've got to take that seriously. It doesn't hurt that they were able to record some very interesting video at the same time.
The abilities of this mysterious craft are staggering.
When an FA-18 Super Hornet has trouble keeping up with another object, that really speaks to the remarkable speed of that craft.
An aircraft that is flying at a high speed suddenly rotates and broadsides into the wind. Any aircraft would be thrown out of the sky by doing this.
We're infantile compared to what those guys can do.
It's not how things fly.
Once you realize that there's other stuff out there like that, the possibilities are endless. And once you know that, there's no going back.
And sometimes, when you least expect it, the UFO that shook your life to its very core returns.
They're back. Are you kidding me? I was in a panic because I knew that this wasn't just in my head anymore.
Exciting new era of incredible high-flying and emotional UFO encounters. Eric and Nathan are deeply touched by the mysteries of their sightings.
I couldn't explain it. It was an unidentified flying object. That's exactly what it was.
I believe that those things have always been there, and just as technology advances and more people have phones that are capable, that's why we're seeing more of them.
The mind-blowing saga continues months later for Matt and the crew of the USS Theodore Roosevelt, when the UFO suddenly returns.
We were out on deployment somewhere in the Middle East. A coworker of mine, the one that had told me about the videos to begin with, just looks at me and he says, "They're back."
So there were pilots who saw this object. There were people at the radar center on the Roosevelt, as well as its support vessels, that would have seen these objects on radar.
Making it even stranger, this time, the unknown craft shows up in an active conflict zone with terrifying implications.
Are you kidding me? This was not ours. We wouldn't test a piece of multi-billion-dollar equipment in a live fire environment where nobody is informed. It just doesn't make sense.
These UFO events open our eyes and minds to frightening, incredible new possibilities when seasoned pilots encounter aircraft with abilities that perplex and astound.
It started changing colors to dirty white, to like a pink, a red, and then it was gone.
If we do have this technology, then we're so much more advanced than what we say we are.
The implications of these experiences fly deep into possibilities of extraterrestrials with frightening scientific abilities.
Like, you have to wonder, who's operating this thing?
He was probably as curious about us as we were curious about him, you know?
I I don't understand how you could not be just fascinated with what you're looking at.
I don't see it as anything that could be man-made, because what that would mean is that we have the power to change the shape of craft in the air and generate some sort of a cloaking cloud that travels with the aircraft as it's changing size.
The mainstream has been forced to acknowledge that we have arrived at a moment of unprecedented and potentially otherworldly discovery.
Legitimate scientists in positions of authority are starting to step forward and say, okay, there's something to this. We need to pay attention.
You have enough information out there, enough video footage, photographs, whatever, that a lot of individuals with top secret clearances and at high levels are saying this is something we should look into.
Now we're at a wonderful time in history where we all get to see this stuff.
And individual beliefs and feelings are strong.
It's changed me in the way I view the world, because I can definitively say, hey man, we're not alone.
If you ask me, we should have been talking about it, 70 years ago. Let's just rip the Band-Aid off and give everybody the meat and potatoes of what's going on.
I can't give you any more proof other than what I saw through the video. In real life, it wasn't like anything that I've seen before.
With every new sighting or testimony or released top secret documentation, the UFO story only gets stronger.
You may not believe in UFOs, but the evidence is out there.
We just started this journey.
I feel like if I can come forward and lend some credibility, then I've done my duty.
People are excited about UFOs. I think people want to know more, and they want to believe, and they want to find out the truth.
And as these high-flying mysteries amaze and challenge us, terrifying realities must be acknowledged.
Even though I was never a believer, I believe it now.
I don't know why they're here or why there's been an abundance of sightings lately. You can't deny it, man. They're out there.
Mysterious objects with frightening technical abilities are seeking out our planes and pilots with increasing frequency. It's crucial we pay attention.
We're only now beginning to hear about how many of these air-to-air sightings there really are.
When there are technologies blatantly being displayed in our skies and we have no explanation for it, as a people, we need to come together and realize this might be the most important issue facing us as a planet.
And the destiny of our planet may lie in unknown hands.
We can record things with our personal devices in a way that we just couldn't do in the past.
I think we've got a great opportunity now. If we can crack this door open on secrecy over the phenomenon.
The feeling in the industry is changing. That's why it appears we're getting so many more pilot sightings.
Regardless of what Eric, Nathan, and Matt thought before their fateful flights, they are now believers.
We're not trying to bunk anybody. I wasn't asking to see one of these things, it just happened. Now I can say, hey, check this out. Yeah, I've seen a UFO, right?
Before all of this happened, I didn't believe in anything kind of spiritual. I have completely changed my mind about all of that.
I don't need anybody to validate this thing that I know I saw. What people need is to come forward with their stories.
I would challenge anybody that has footage like this, put it out there, man. Don't be afraid.
And as more and more unidentified craft are being captured and released, these incredible stories are reaching a wider, amazed audience.
We're starting to have a community of people that are interested in what's happening because we have mass media talking about it.
When mainstream media is reporting on these videos without ridicule, that has to be a wake-up call to everyone around the world.
This story has not fully played out yet.
From the skies over the Pacific Northwest to the deserts of New Mexico to the Aegean Sea, the inexplicable is being revealed to pilots and passengers all over the world. These stories, and many others like them, leave big questions unanswered. What exactly are these objects? And what do they want?
I think that we'd all rather know what's happening rather than living in the dark.
Ufologists are just waiting for that other shoe to drop. There are apparently more videos to be released.
We're only scratching the surface.
There's not going to be any room for skepticism at some point. It's a cliche, but here we have it right in front of our face. It's caught on film. UFOs are real, and we have the proof.
And if we are being watched by alien creatures, what's the end game?
I don't know why they're here or why there's been an abundance of sightings lately. Some people have theorized that there's good ones and bad ones, right? And so maybe they're here to see how we're going to react.
I have a hard time with the idea of militaries and war and stuff like that. I think these non-human entities are here to try and bring the human race into this next step of evolution.
Who knows, maybe they've been watching us and they're helping us grow this whole time, and they've always kind of been right off of our shoulder. Just keep your eyes on the stars, and if you do that long enough, eventually you'll see something.